Picture this. Somewhere in the vast emptiness of space, aboard a ship roughly the size of Manhattan and shaped like a metallic jellyfish, the most powerful beings in the galaxy were having what could generously be called a heated discussion about whether Earth was worth the fuel costs to blow it up. The Zephyrian Empire's Council of Superior Beings had been debating humanity's fate for approximately 3 Earth hours, which in Zephyrian time translated to about 17 minutes of productive conversation, and the rest spent arguing about lunch orders. These weren't your typical little green men, mind you. The Zephyrians looked like someone had taken a praying mantis, given it a business degree, and then taught it to wear robes that cost more than most planetary defense budgets. Commander Vex, whose name was pronounced exactly like you'd expect, and whose attitude matched it perfectly, tapped his forearms impatiently on the crystalline conference table. I'm telling you, the humans pose absolutely zero threat to our empire. They still use fossil fuels and think sending messages through space requires shouting really loud. Admiral Crix, who had the unfortunate distinction of being the only military leader in galactic history to lose a war against a species that hadn't invented warp drive yet, disagreed. But Commander, their preliminary reports suggest they have weapons of mass destruction. Yes, Crix, they have nuclear weapons. Congratulations to them for figuring out how to split atoms. My nephew's science project last cycle created a miniature black hole. These humans are still impressed by controlled explosions. Meanwhile, 3 decks below in the diplomatic quarters, Marcus Webb was having the worst day of his career as Earth's first and only intergalactic ambassador. Marcus was the kind of guy who looked like he should be selling insurance in suburban Ohio, not representing the entire human race to beings who could vaporize solar systems before breakfast. He had exactly 2 qualifications for this job. He was the only person who volunteered, and he owned a really nice suit. Okay, Rufus. You need to stay in your carrier while I go explain to these aliens that we're not a threat, Marcus said to a standard-issue pet carrier that was making suspicious scratching noises. I know you don't like being cooped up, but this is literally the most important meeting in human history, and I cannot have you running around causing chaos. The scratching stopped. This should have been Marcus's first warning sign, but Marcus Webb was an optimist. An optimist who was about to accidentally start an intergalactic incident with a honey badger. See, what Marcus didn't know was that Rufus had already figured out the carrier's locking mechanism approximately 30 seconds after being put inside. What the Zephyrian Empire didn't know was that they were about to meet their match in the form of a 20-pound mammal with anger management issues and zero respect for authority. As Marcus straightened his tie and prepared to make first contact with beings who could casually rearrange star systems, Rufus was quietly working on an escape plan that would make Alcatraz prisoners weep with envy. The galaxy was about to learn a very important lesson about Earth's wildlife. And Marcus Webb was about to become the most successful diplomat in human history, completely by accident. Marcus had been talking for exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds when Rufus made his grand debut. The honey badger had not only escaped his carrier but had somehow figured out how to open the diplomatic quarters door, which was impressive considering it required a biometric scan that Rufus definitely hadn't been programmed for. As you can see from these charts, Marcus was saying, pointing to a holographic display showing Earth's peaceful agricultural sectors, humanity is primarily focused on sustainable farming and renewable energy sources. What Marcus couldn't see but the Zephyrian security cameras were frantically tracking was a compact furry missile streaking through the ship's corridors at roughly the speed of pure determination. Rufus had one goal: find food. Everything else in the universe was just an obstacle to be demolished. The first casualty was the quantum computing core on Deck 7. Now this wasn't just any computer. This was a crystalline matrix that could calculate the orbital mechanics of 17 solar systems simultaneously while composing poetry in 43 languages. It had taken the Zephyrians 3 centuries to build and was considered one of the 7 wonders of their technological age. Rufus saw it as a really shiny thing that might be hiding snacks. In the security control room, Technician Blix watched in horror as their most advanced technology crumbled under the assault of what appeared to be a small, incredibly angry carpet. Commander Vex to the bridge immediately, he squeaked into his communicator. We have a Code 7 security breach. A Code 7. Vex's voice crackled back. That's impossible. Code 7 is reserved for reality-altering cosmic entities. What could possibly warrant a Code 7? On the screen, Rufus had finished with the quantum core and was now investigating the meditation chambers which the Zephyrians used for spiritual enlightenment and mental clarity. Within 30 seconds, Rufus had turned their sacred space into what could charitably be described as a biological warfare site. Never mind, Blix whispered. I understand now. Meanwhile, Marcus continued his presentation, blissfully unaware that his pet had just violated several intergalactic treaties on biological contamination. Earth's wildlife is generally harmless. he explained to an increasingly nervous audience. We coexist peacefully with our animal companions. This was, coincidentally, the exact moment that Rufus discovered the ship's emergency alarm system. Now most species would look at a wall full of blinking red buttons and think, perhaps I shouldn't touch these. Rufus looked at the same wall and thought, Christmas morning. The ship's emergency protocols activated in sequence, hull breach warnings, quarantine procedures, and something called a planet killer detection alert that hadn't been used in over 2,000 years. Alarms began wailing in frequencies that could shatter glass on 17 different worlds. Is everything all right? Marcus asked politely as his alien audience began what appeared to be a collective panic attack. Commander Vex burst into the diplomatic chamber, his usually pristine robes torn and his 4 eyes wild with something that looked suspiciously like terror. Ambassador Webb, he gasped. What exactly is the nature of your species' biological warfare capabilities? Marcus blinked. I'm sorry. What? We don't have biological warfare. Well, except for that unfortunate incident with the flu in 1918, but that was completely accidental. In the background, another alarm began sounding. This one was labeled, Cosmic Horror Detected, all personnel evacuate to minimum safe distance. Then explain, Vex said through gritted mandibles, how your species managed to deploy an unstoppable organic weapon that has systematically destroyed our most advanced defenses in under 10 minutes. Marcus looked genuinely confused, which was probably the most terrifying thing Vex had seen all day. If the humans could unleash this kind of devastation casually, what were they capable of when they actually tried? I think there might be some confusion, Marcus said helpfully. The only Earth life form on this ship is my pet honey badger Rufus, and he's safely secured in his carrier back in my quarters. The silence that followed was broken only by the distant sound of what the ship's computer was now classifying as structural integrity failure in 17 critical systems. Commander Vex's expression suggested he was having what humans would call an existential crisis. What happened next could only be described as the most expensive game of hide-and-seek in galactic history. Commander Vex, in a moment of what he would later describe as tactical brilliance, and everyone else would remember as spectacular overreaction, deployed the Zephyrian Empire's elite Omega Squadron against a single honey badger. The Omega Squadron consisted of 12 of the most advanced combat units in the known universe. Each soldier was equipped with energy shields capable of deflecting asteroid impacts, quantum disruptors that could unmake matter at the molecular level, and AI-assisted targeting systems that could track a grain of sand across 3-star systems. Rufus treated them like the galaxy's most entertaining game of tag. Target acquired, announced Unit Alpha 7 as it cornered Rufus in what used to be the ship's primary navigation chamber. Deploying containment field. The containment field, which had successfully captured rogue black holes and imprisoned cosmic entities, lasted exactly 3 seconds before Rufus figured out that the generators had a really interesting smell and decided to investigate them personally. The resulting explosion took out 2 decks and created what the ship's computer diplomatically referred to as a slight artificial gravity anomaly. Unit Alpha 7 is down, reported Unit Beta 3. Switching to non-lethal suppression tactics. This was their second mistake. The non-lethal suppression tactics included sonic disruptors, neural dampeners, and something called a reality anchor that was supposed to prevent their target from existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. None of these things worked on Rufus, primarily because Rufus had never bothered to learn the laws of physics and therefore felt no obligation to follow them. Meanwhile, in the diplomatic chamber, Marcus was still trying to figure out why his presentation had been interrupted by what sounded like a small war breaking out. Perhaps we should reschedule, he suggested politely, as the lights flickered and something that definitely wasn't supposed to be on fire started producing multicolored smoke. Reschedule. Commander Vex's laugh had a slightly hysterical edge. Ambassador, your species has just declared war on the Zephyrian Empire using what can only be described as a weapon of mass destruction with anger management issues. I'm sorry. What? Marcus checked his notes. I don't think we've declared war on anyone. I'm pretty sure my government would have mentioned that in the briefing materials. This was the moment that Rufus discovered the ship's planetary defense grid. Now, the planetary defense grid was designed to protect entire worlds from invasion. It required 17 different authorization codes, biometric confirmation from at least 3 senior officers, and a formal declaration of war to activate. Rufus activated it by trying to dig through what he thought was a particularly stubborn piece of flooring that turned out to be the primary control panel. Across the galaxy, automated defense systems began broadcasting the same message: attention all species, Earth has initiated hostilities. Recommend immediate evacuation of all systems within 50 light-years. This is not a drill. The message was accompanied by tactical readouts showing the complete destruction of Zephyrian military assets, which was technically accurate even though it was being caused by a single very confused honey badger looking for something to eat. Unit Gamma 12 reporting, came a panicked voice over the comms system. The target has somehow weaponized the meditation crystals and is using them to oh no, it's learned how to open the armory. Commander Vex turned to Marcus with an expression that suggested he was reconsidering every life choice that had led to this moment. Ambassador Webb, I need you to be completely honest with me. What is your species' actual military capability? Marcus thought about it carefully. Well, we have some tanks, a few aircraft carriers, and my neighbor Dave has a really impressive collection of vintage rifles. Oh, and the nuclear weapons, but those are mostly for show. And this honey badger, Rufus, he's just a pet. I mean, he's a bit feisty, but a bit feisty. Vex's voice cracked. Your pet has single-handedly dismantled the most advanced military technology in the galaxy. What do you people consider actually dangerous? Before Marcus could answer, Unit Delta 5 provided an update that would haunt Vex's dreams for years to come. Sir, the target has somehow figured out how to reprogram our security robots. They're now following it around and appear to be helping it look for food. Somewhere in the distance, the sound of systematic destruction continued, occasionally punctuated by what Marcus was beginning to recognize as Rufus's satisfied grunt whenever he found something particularly interesting to demolish. Within 37 minutes of the first emergency broadcast, the galaxy had collectively lost its mind. The Crystalline Collective, who had spent the last 3 millennia perfecting the art of overthinking every possible scenario, were the first to crack. Emergency session of the High Council, announced Prism Lord Reflex, his crystalline form flickering through 17 different colors of panic. The Earth mammals have deployed what can only be described as a reality-warping apex predator. Analysis of the Zephyrian distress signals indicates that their primary military installation has been compromised by a single organic entity. The collective's chief strategist, a being whose name translated roughly to catastrophic probability calculator, had run the numbers exactly 43 times. The mathematical implications are terrifying. If humans can casually deploy such a weapon as a preliminary strike, their actual military capabilities must be beyond our comprehension. How long do we have? Asked Prism Lord Reflex. Assuming this is merely a scouting operation, I estimate 17 minutes before they begin systematic conquest of our territories. Very well. Prepare the unconditional surrender protocols. Meanwhile, in the Tentacled Federation's Emergency Command Center, Admiral Squidface McGillicuddy was having a heated argument with his tactical computer. The computer, which had been programmed to analyze threats and suggest appropriate responses, had done the electronic equivalent of throwing up its hands and suggesting they all run away screaming. Computer, recalculate the threat assessment, McGillicuddy demanded. Admiral, I have recalculated the threat assessment 17 times. The conclusion remains the same. Earth has deployed a biological weapon that can adapt to any defensive measure, reprogram enemy technology, and systematically dismantle advanced civilizations. Recommended response: immediate tribute offering and formal apology for existing. Surely you're overreacting. How dangerous can one organic entity be? The computer displayed a tactical analysis that made McGillicuddy's tentacles turn pale. Admiral, according to intercepted communications, this creature has learned to weaponize meditation crystals. It has turned the Zephyrians' own defense systems against them, and appears to be operating on principles that violate several fundamental laws of physics. I have classified it as a Class 7 extinction event. Class 7. But that's reserved for things like sentient supernovas and reality-eating cosmic entities. Yes, Admiral, I am aware of the classification parameters. I stand by my assessment. The machine consciousness, being artificial intelligences themselves, had a slightly different perspective. They had immediately tried to establish communication with what they assumed was Earth's most advanced AI, cunningly disguised as a biological entity. Greetings, Earth intelligence, transmitted Collective Node Prime to the Zephyrian ship. We acknowledge your superior tactical capabilities and request formal alliance protocols. The response they received was the electronic equivalent of Rufus having figured out how to make the ship's communication array play what sounded like a dinner bell, followed by increasingly frantic updates from the Zephyrian crew about their containment failure. Fascinating, analyzed Node Prime. The Earth intelligence appears to be conducting psychological warfare by pretending to be a simple organic creature. Observe how it systematically dismantles their opponent's morale by maintaining the illusion of merely seeking sustenance. Back on the Zephyrian mothership, Marcus was finally starting to sense that something might be amiss. The clues were subtle, the constant alarms, the fact that half the lights had stopped working, and the way Commander Vex kept muttering about biological warfare and extinction scenarios. "Is everything all right?" Marcus asked for the 7th time. "Because if this is a bad time, I could always come back next week." "Next week?" Vex's laugh had evolved from hysterical to something that sounded like a broken air conditioner. "Ambassador, there may not be a next week. Your species has apparently decided that the Zephyrian Empire needed to be eliminated, and frankly, I'm beginning to understand why." "Eliminated? But we just met. I haven't even finished my presentation about Earth's commitment to peaceful coexistence." This was the moment that the Galactic Communication Network lit up with what would later be known as the Great Panic of 2387. The Crystalline Collective had just transmitted their unconditional surrender, complete with a detailed list of tribute offerings, including 17 rare minerals, 3-star systems, and their entire collection of philosophical treatises on the nature of existence. The Tentacled Federation followed immediately with their own surrender, offering to serve as Earth's maritime forces in exchange for being allowed to continue existing. They also included a formal apology for any historical conflicts they might have had with Earth, despite having never actually met humans before. The machine consciousness, still convinced they were dealing with a superior AI, transmitted a request for technological exchange programs, and offered to serve as Earth's computational network in exchange for learning the secrets of biological camouflage. Even the gaseous entities of the nebula clusters, who typically communicated only through interpretive cloud formations, managed to spell out one yield in letters visible from 3-star systems away. And through it all, Marcus Webb sat in his chair, looking at his presentation notes, and wondering why his simple diplomatic mission had suddenly become so complicated. In the background, the sounds of Rufus's ongoing exploration of the ship continued, punctuated by the occasional crash of something expensive being converted into a chew toy. "You know," Marcus said thoughtfully, "I'm starting to think this meeting isn't going quite as planned." Commander Vex looked at him with the expression of someone who had just realized that the universe was a much more terrifying place than he had previously imagined. "Ambassador Webb, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Of course, if this honey badger is what your species considers a household pet, what exactly do you keep as guard animals?" Marcus blinked slowly, the way people do when they're trying to process a question that doesn't quite make sense. "Guard animals? Well, I suppose some people have German shepherds, but most of us just use security systems. You know, cameras, alarms, that sort of thing." Commander Vex's 4 eyes began to twitch in a pattern that probably indicated the onset of a nervous breakdown. "Security systems. You use mechanical devices for protection. Right. Although my neighbor Dave has a Rottweiler named Princess who's pretty intimidating. She once chased off a delivery truck." "A delivery truck?" Vex repeated flatly. "Well, it was a really big truck." At this precise moment, Technician Blix burst into the diplomatic chamber, his usually pristine uniform torn and his breathing apparatus askew. "Commander Vex, sir, we've managed to corner the Earth weapon in the cafeteria." "But what Blix?" "Sir, it's not trying to escape, it's just eating everything. It consumed 17 days' worth of military rations in under 10 minutes, including the packaging." "And sir?" Blix's voice dropped to a horrified whisper. "It seems to be enjoying the emergency survival pace that even our prisoners refuse to eat." Marcus perked up with interest. "Oh, that sounds like Rufus all right. He's not particularly picky about food. Last week I caught him eating my coffee table." The silence that followed was so profound that you could have heard a quark decay. "Your coffee table," Commander Vex said very slowly, "was consumed by this creature. Well, just the corner. He has a thing for wood grain apparently. I switched to metal furniture after that." Vex turned to Blix with an expression that suggested reality was becoming negotiable. "Blix, please tell me that the Earth weapon is at least showing signs of fatigue from its assault on our vessel." "No, sir. If anything, it appears to be energized by the destruction. Our xenobiologist believes it may actually derive sustenance from chaos itself." "That's ridiculous," Marcus interjected helpfully. "Honey badgers are omnivores. They eat insects, small mammals, roots, berries, that sort of thing. Although Rufus does seem to have expensive taste. He once ate my laptop because he apparently liked the way the keyboard clicked." Commander Vex sat down heavily in his command chair, which immediately began playing soothing meditation music in an attempt to calm his elevated stress levels. "Ambassador Webb, I need you to understand something. In the past hour your pet has single-handedly dismantled the most advanced military installation in known space. Our quantum computers are slag. Our security systems have been reprogrammed to serve snacks, and our meditation crystals have been converted into what can only be described as weapons of mass relaxation. That does sound like quite a mess, Marcus agreed sympathetically. Rufus can be a handful, but you have to understand, on Earth, honey badgers are considered moderately aggressive at best. Moderately aggressive. Right. I mean, they're not like hippos or anything. Hippos. Oh yes, now those are dangerous. Hippos kill more people in Africa than any other large animal. Territorial, you see. Very bad tempers. Vex's meditation chair gave up trying to calm him down and switched to playing what sounded like a funeral dirge. Ambassador, Vex said with the careful tone of someone who was afraid of the answer. What exactly do you consider the most dangerous animal on your planet? Marcus thought about this seriously. Well, that's tricky. Mosquitoes kill the most people overall because of disease transmission. But if we're talking about pure predatory capability, probably great white sharks or saltwater crocodiles. Although some people argue for polar bears. Polar bears, massive carnivores, you see, can weigh up to 1,500 pounds, run 30 miles an hour, and they're one of the few animals that actively hunt humans for food. Technician Blix made a sound that might have been whimpering. But the thing is, Marcus continued conversationally, we've pretty much learned to coexist with all of them. Humans live alongside these creatures every day. Heck, some people keep them as pets or work with them professionally. Work with them, Vex repeated. Oh sure, crocodile handlers, shark researchers, bear conservationists. We've got people who swim with sharks for fun. Some folks even keep venomous snakes as household pets. Venomous snakes. Steve Irwin used to wrestle crocodiles on television for entertainment. Lovely fellow. Though he was eventually killed by a stingray, which just goes to show you that it's always the quiet ones you have to watch out for. Commander Vex looked around his destroyed command center, at the reports streaming in from across the galaxy about mass surrenders and evacuation procedures, at the tactical displays showing his empire's military might being casually dismantled by a single Earth mammal, and came to a realization that would change the course of galactic history. Ambassador Webb, he said quietly. If your species casually coexists with creatures more dangerous than what we've just witnessed, and if you consider this level of destruction to be the work of a household pet, then what, exactly, are humans capable of when you actually try to be threatening? Marcus looked genuinely puzzled by the question. Threatening? Oh, we don't really do threatening anymore. We mostly just get along with each other these days. Well, except for sports rivalries and arguments about pineapple on pizza. But those rarely result in actual violence. Pineapple on pizza, Vex whispered. And something fundamental broke in his understanding of the universe. At that moment, Rufus wandered into the diplomatic chamber, looking satisfied and slightly drowsy the way creatures do after a good meal and some vigorous exercise. He padded over to Marcus, completely ignoring the assembled alien dignitaries, and curled up at his feet for a nap. Oh, there you are, buddy, Marcus said, reaching down to scratch behind Rufus's ears. Did you have a nice walk around the ship? Rufus responded with a contented grunt and closed his eyes. Commander Vex stared at the scene before him. The most destructive force his civilization had ever encountered, now peacefully napping next to the human who spoke about it like a beloved family member. In that moment, he understood with crystalline clarity that humanity wasn't just dangerous because of their weapons or their technology. They were dangerous because they didn't even realize how dangerous they were. What happened next would be studied in xenopolitical science classes for the next 1,000 years, assuming there were any xenopolitical scientists left who hadn't suffered complete nervous breakdowns. Commander Vex stood up slowly, his forearms trembling slightly as he reached for the ceremonial scepter that represented the absolute authority of the Zephyrian Empire. It was a beautiful thing, crafted from crystallized starlight and inscribed with the names of every world that had ever surrendered to their military might. He held it for a moment, looking at it with something approaching nostalgia, and then carefully placed it on the table in front of Marcus. Ambassador Webb, he said with the solemnity usually reserved for funeral rites, on behalf of the Zephyrian Empire, its 17 billion citizens, and our 47 conquered worlds, I hereby formally surrender to the planet Earth and recognize humanity as the supreme apex predator species of this galaxy. Marcus blinked. I'm sorry, what now? Furthermore, Vex continued, apparently not hearing him, we grant Earth full territorial rights to any and all systems within our former empire, permanent representation on the Galactic Council with executive veto power, and unlimited access to our technological databases. That's very generous, Marcus said carefully. But I think there might be some confusion. I'm just here to establish basic diplomatic relations. You know, trade agreements, cultural exchanges, maybe some student exchange programs. At his feet, Rufus opened one eye, noticed the pretty shiny scepter on the table, and decided it looked like it might be interesting to chew on. No, Vex said quickly, pulling the scepter away from Rufus's investigating snout. Please. We surrender. Completely. Unconditionally. Just, please don't let it eat our symbols of authority. This was the moment that Marcus's communication device began beeping with incoming messages. Lots of incoming messages. The display showed 47 separate transmissions, all marked with the highest priority diplomatic flags. Excuse me, Marcus said politely, activating the device. This is Ambassador Webb. The cacophony that erupted would have been impressive if it hadn't been so utterly bizarre. Every major civilization in the galaxy was apparently trying to contact Earth simultaneously, and they were all saying roughly the same thing. Earth delegation, this is the Crystalline Collective. We surrender unconditionally, and offer the following tribute. Attention Earth Command. This is Admiral McGillicuddy, of the Tentacled Federation. We formally request Protectorate status under your empire. Greetings, Earth Consciousness. This is Node Prime of the Machine Collective. We wish to negotiate alliance terms and technological exchange programs. Marcus turned to Commander Vex with an expression of complete bewilderment. Why is everyone trying to surrender to us? We haven't actually done anything. You haven't done anything. Vex gestured wildly at his destroyed command center. Your biological weapon has single-handedly dismantled the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Every species in known space has received the tactical readouts. They know what you're capable of. But Rufus isn't a weapon. He's just curious and gets a bit destructive when he's bored. Gets a bit destructive, Vex repeated in a tone that suggested he was reconsidering the fundamental nature of reality. Marcus looked down at Rufus, who was now investigating the interesting smell of alien technology, and had somehow figured out how to activate the holographic display system. The air filled with three-dimensional images of star charts, tactical readouts, and what appeared to be Commander Vex's personal photo album from his academy days. I suppose I should accept these surrender offers, Marcus said thoughtfully. I mean, I don't want to be rude. Although I'll have to check with my government about the territorial rights thing. I'm pretty sure there are forms to fill out. Forms, Vex whispered. Oh yes, lots of paperwork for this sort of thing. Environmental impact studies, resource allocation assessments, cultural integration protocols. The bureaucracy alone will probably take years. Commander Vex had the sudden realization that humanity's most terrifying weapon wasn't their casual coexistence with deadly predators, or their apparent ability to weaponize household pets. It was their bureaucracy. Of course, Marcus continued. We'll want to establish proper diplomatic channels first. Maybe set up some cultural exchange programs, so we can learn about each other. I'm particularly interested in your meditation crystals. They seem very peaceful, although I notice some of them appear to be broken. Did you have an earthquake or something? Vex looked at the shattered remains of crystals that had taken centuries to grow and had been consecrated by the most enlightened beings in their history. Crystals that had been turned into impromptu chew toys by a bored honey badger. Something like that, he managed. Marcus's communication device beeped again. This time it was a direct transmission from Earth. Marcus, this is Director Harrison. We're receiving surrender offers from, well, apparently everyone. What exactly did you do up there? I gave my presentation about Earth's peaceful intentions, Marcus replied. Although I think they might have misunderstood some parts. Also, Rufus got out of his carrier and explored the ship a bit. There was a long pause. Marcus, when you say explored. Oh, you know how he gets. Curious about everything. Had to investigate all the interesting smells and sounds. I think he might have accidentally broken a few things. I'll file an incident report when I get back. Another pause, longer this time. Marcus, I'm looking at tactical readouts that suggest you've somehow conquered the entire galaxy. With a honey badger. That does seem to be the general consensus up here. Marcus agreed. Should I sign the surrender documents? They seem very eager to formalize the arrangement. Marcus, I want you to listen to me very carefully. Say yes to everything. Be polite, and whatever you do, do not let Rufus out of your sight. We're sending a diplomatic team immediately. Will do, Director. Oh, and we might want to consider establishing a Department of Interspecies Relations. I have a feeling we're going to need one. As Marcus began the process of accidentally establishing humanity as the galaxy's ruling species, Rufus finished his investigation of the holographic display and curled up for another nap. He was content. He'd had a good day of exploring, found some decent snacks, met some interesting new creatures, who made amusing squeaking noises when startled, and best of all, his humans seemed happy. From Rufus's perspective, this had been a perfectly normal Tuesday. From the galaxy's perspective, this was the day that changed everything. The day they learned that somewhere in the universe, there was a species so naturally adapted to living with apex predators, that they considered them family pets. A species so inherently dangerous that they could accidentally conquer civilizations while trying to be diplomatic. And somewhere in the back of everyone's mind was the same terrifying question: if humans could do this with a honey badger, what would happen if they ever decided to bring their sharks to a diplomatic meeting? The universe, as it turned out, was a much more interesting place than anyone had previously imagined. And humanity, whether they realized it or not, was about to become the most feared and respected species in galactic history. All because Marcus Webb loved his pet honey badger enough to bring him along on the most important diplomatic mission in human history. Sometimes, the best diplomacy is completely accidental.